We begin with Kanemia heading to the dungeon with a guard. The guard wonders if she truly plans to meet the prisoner, and she calmly says yes. However, he warns that the person is not worth meeting because the boy was found to be an unknown intruder on the Grand Duke's hunting grounds. Moreover, when he was found, he was covered in someone else's blood. Because of this, the guard recalls the moment they first discovered him. At that time, he was shocked to see that the intruder was just a child, so he told him the land belonged to the Grand Duchy and warned him to leave before being arrested for trespassing. Yet the boy responded strangely, saying he thought he had already killed all of them. But there were still more left. Remembering this again makes the guard uneasy because the child clearly did not seem normal. In the present moment, he admits he still has a bad feeling about him. Nevertheless, our girl calmly says it is fine because she has her own reasons and asks him to take her there. The guard agrees, and she thanks him. Honestly, hearing that kind of story would make anyone uneasy. Meanwhile, the maid thinks their lady deserves thanks because she believes their lady is the best. As they continue, the guard warns her to watch her step and even offers to carry her, but she refuses. The maid then asks her to at least hold her hand, and she finally agrees. At that moment, Kanemia quietly thinks she is sorry for being stubborn, yet she must meet that child for a reason. Then we learn the truth behind her thoughts. First, she has been reincarnated as Kanemia Leon. Second, this world is actually the setting of a web novel she once read in her past life called The Chronicles of Aldium. Third, Kanemia Leon is destined to die soon. She remembers realizing this after her father passed away when she woke from a dream and understood that the memories were from a past life. That was the moment she realized she was living inside the world of a novel, and not even a special one, but a very common fantasy story. The biggest shock was realizing she had become this character herself. Soon after that discovery, the maid Vanessa noticed that she had woken up on her own that morning. From there, we learn about the infamous villainous Kanemia Leon and the painful history of her family. Her grandfather, Kenneth Leon, was known as the righteous scoundrel, a man who openly declared that he was cleaning up the corruption left by nobles across the empire and that they should pay for their sins with both their lives and their wealth. He executed many corrupt nobles, yet this path eventually brought revenge, and he was poisoned and murdered. After him came her mother, Iria Leon, once called the hero of the empire. She possessed unmatched sword skill and conquered many neighboring kingdoms, yet during a victory celebration, she was suddenly assassinated by enemies seeking revenge. Attention then turns to her father, Troy Leon. In a painful memory, he cries out to his beloved, begging her not to leave him behind. Despite his grief, he inherits the title of Grand Duke and takes responsibility for the family. In addition, blessed with noble blood and striking looks, he starts a business to rebuild the Leon family and provide for his daughter. He boldly asks many ladies to invest in his business, and surprisingly, they happily agree. With the money he gathers through charm and connections, his business succeeds. However, tragedy strikes again when he is murdered for revenge after someone angrily accuses him of trying to seduce them and stabs him through the heart. Left alone, Kanemia becomes the center of cruel rumors. People begin calling her the tyrannical granddaughter, the aggressive daughter, and the beautiful villainess of the Leon family. Soon, she becomes known everywhere as the wicked heiress. With a history like this, it almost feels like fate keeps attacking that family. As time passes, our girl tries to defend herself, saying she may have trained in swordsmanship, but she has never harmed anyone. She even wonders if she resembles her father and says that should not be a bad thing. Sadly, no one supports her. Because of endless suspicion and harsh judgment, her heart slowly twists and she eventually becomes the ruthless ruler people already believed her to be. Her cruel name spreads everywhere, and when suffering citizens beg for mercy, the story's protagonist finally sends her to the guillotine. Facing death, she thinks she does not want to die. Later, another memory appears. She sits quietly while her maid, Vanessa, gives her a gift from a distant land, explaining that the doll reminds her of the lady because its blushing cheeks are cute. Toby suddenly calls out Vanessa's name, and Kanemia realizes the gift came because the maid noticed she had been feeling down. She thanks her, and Vanessa happily says she is glad it was liked. Yet while looking at the doll, Kanemia suddenly wonders if it looks like a monster. Vanessa asks what monster she means, and suddenly she remembers something important from her past life. That creature was a huge success in the original novel because the protagonist found it early and used it to gain fame and success. Because of that memory, Kanemia quickly writes down the key information she remembers from the story. She thinks that if she recruits those powerful characters before the protagonist does, she might change her fate, although she decides she must avoid anyone who holds a grudge against her. One of those people is Ayan Kreutz, a candidate to become the Tower Master and a mysterious figure who often helps the protagonist in times of crisis. She realizes he is one of the most powerful characters, which makes meeting him tempting, yet he is also dangerous because, in the original story, he helped send her to the guillotine. Because of that memory, we return to the present moment in the dungeon. Our girl thinks she should avoid dangerous people because she does not want to gamble with her fate. She also remembers that in the original story she captured Ayan and treated him like a plaything inside the Grand Duke's castle. However, she now plans to treat him kindly and send him away without leaving any grudge. Soon the guard announces that they have arrived. Inside the cell, Kanemia meets Ayan. He speaks about the formal greeting of the Leon family, mentions bowing before the lion's wings, and even calls her the Grand Duchess. She quickly rejects the strange title and says that, if she is a lady, then she is simply a lady, asking why he keeps using the Grand Duchess title. He casually explains that he said it twice just to make a good impression. She replies that he does not need to impress her. However, he suddenly asks whether she plans to kill him immediately, since the Grand Duchess is known for being ruthless. She calmly answers that she will not kill him. The guard is shocked when she orders the prisoner released. Ayan becomes suspicious and wonders if she is setting him free only to hunt him later for sport. Kanemia becomes irritated and asks what kind of person he thinks she is, explaining that she simply does not dare to kill someone like Rakasha. The guard is stunned and blurts out that Rakasha is the tower's second-in-command, asking how she knows. At the same time, Ayan asks how she knows his identity. She refuses to explain and simply warns him not to get caught again, then tells him to leave. Afterward, she thinks this is the perfect clean break and that removing this grudge from her future makes her feel relieved. However, a few days later, something unexpected happens. She meets Ayan again in prison. He greets her casually, which confuses her, and she asks why he is still there. He simply explains that he got caught again. We continue with Kanemia watching the strange scene in the prison as the guard speaks to Ayan and offers him food. The guard casually asks if he wants to eat, but he only asks if there is anything else and mentions that the pie he ate yesterday was delicious. The guard explains that the pie is only available on Wednesdays, and he happily says he is looking forward to next Wednesday. Kanemia suddenly questions whether he plans to get caught again just for that pie and points out that he has already been caught 7 times. He simply repeats that the pie was good. Confused, she wonders if he holds a grudge against her, but he asks if they have even met before to have one. Realizing that cannot be the case, she confirms there is no grudge, and he calmly agrees. She then asks why he keeps getting caught, and the guard changes the subject, mentioning he heard she is recruiting a knight. Kanemia becomes frustrated and asks if the guard told him that, and he apologizes quickly. Ayan announces he wants to apply for the knight position. Kanemia is confused since he is a rikisha and should be busy with the magic tower, but he casually says he is not that busy and is talented anyway. She explains that the position is temporary and involves following her all day in a tough job. He says it sounds great and even suggests he can just get caught again if she refuses. Our girl thinks deeply, wondering about his motives and why he is so determined. Realizing that forcing someone away who came willingly could create a grudge, she decides to allow it until his injuries heal, and he happily agrees. She quietly thinks she will keep him close for now and send him away once he recovers. Soon after, Ayan stands behind her as her knight, and some maids notice and whisper. One asks if he is her new knight, and another confirms it, mentioning the rumors that he is a rikisha and commenting on his looks. A maid is shocked to learn he is a candidate for the Magic Tower Master. They gossip that he once trespassed into the territory and was imprisoned, but Kanemia recognized him and released him, and he volunteered to be her knight out of gratitude. The maids admire Kanemia for having a rikisha as a knight and for staying strong despite cruel rumors, praising her dignity and saying she resembles her mother. Vanessa approaches Kanemia and asks if she is heading to the conference room, offering cookies for energy and handing them to Ayan. Kanemia thanks her politely and waves goodbye as she leaves. Suddenly, Ayan throws the snacks out the window. Kanemia is shocked and asks why, and he says he does not want to eat. She scolds him, saying that if he does not want it, he should have said so because someone prepared it with effort. He responds coldly, asking why that matters. Kanemia thinks he is completely unstable and dangerously strange. She turns and tells him they should go to the meeting before being late. I would seriously start wondering if keeping him around was a good idea. In the next scene, We are in the meeting hall where several retainers are already talking. A man says it is time to start getting ready. A royal lady asks what he means, and he explains that the Grand Duchy is vacant and wonders how long Kinemia will remain a Grand Duchess. Another lady responds that the emperor is delaying approval, and receiving a title brings responsibility that could become a burden. A third lady disagrees, saying Kinemia is intelligent and should not be dismissed because she is young. She adds that she will follow whatever Kinemia wishes because the matter cannot be resolved by debate, and points out that the Lian family's position in the empire has weakened. The door opens, and she enters with Ayan. The lady quietly wonders if he's the Rikasha from the rumors, noticing he is standing instead of Vanessa. Kinemia calmly says everyone has gathered. Another lady notices the atmosphere feels different. As head of the Lian family, Kinemia seems aware of her role, and the retainers have gone through many hardships together. Until now, they made the decisions, but now she has plans of her own and can no longer act like a child, showing the dignity of a true master. As Kinemia approaches the chair, she says it is too high. One retainer offers help, but another man questions why she arrived with a Rikasha instead of Vanessa and why her demeanor is different. Kinemia thinks she can hear everything people are saying and remembers that Vanessa used to sit her down before. From now on, she must do it herself, because whining for help to climb a chair would not suit a Grand Duchess. Interestingly, one man has the same thought. She attempts to climb the chair herself but slips and falls, shocking everyone. The retainers turn away, pretending they did not see anything. One claims he was looking out the window and another says the Grand Duchess looks beautiful today. Kinemia shyly asks if that is true. Ayan quietly lifts her onto the chair, saying he did not think she could climb alone. The men respond that she could sit alone, only her legs are a bit short. One adds that she is a true lady, smaller now but will grow taller once mature. Someone jokes that calling her a little fairy is too much. Ayan calmly says the wings of a little fairy can only be seen by kind-hearted people, so the man cannot see them. The man asks if he is being called bad, and Ayan confirms that is why he cannot see the wings. Kinemia thinks desperately that they should stop because it is humiliating. Honestly, if I were there, I would probably wish the floor would open and swallow me. We're introduced to Kinemia and Ayan on a busy market day, and we quickly get a sense of just how crowded the place is. Kinemia notices this immediately and comments on it, and they both tell the driver that they'll return later, receiving a careful warning to be cautious. Then Ayan asks her what she's looking for, and she directs him to a shop with a frog sign where the artisans she wants to find are located. He confirms if she means the same artisans from yesterday's meeting, and she nods. In her memory, we see the meeting unfold as Kinemia explains her plan to make slime toys from the monster byproducts they collect. One of the retirees is surprised by the idea, but she insists they are fun for kids, and she already knows an artisan who can make them. Everyone claps for her, impressed by her initiative, and one man calls her a business planner, while another crowns her the supreme ruler of the slime world. Back in the present, Ayan teases her about being the queen of slime, but she brushes it off, thinking to herself that it isn't really slime she's commissioning. He questions whether she needs to search for them herself, reminding her she has subordinates, but she says she has her reasons and wants him to alert her if he sees a frog sign. As she navigates the market, she wonders where the shop is, recalling that it should be on this street. She pushes through the crowd, carefully making her way and reminding herself not to lose sight of Ayan. Looking back, she realizes he isn't there, and panic sets in as she searches for him, calling out his name. A man notices and points her in the right direction, and she thanks him, but then someone bumps into her. The man offers to clear a path and guides her straight, assuring that she will find her friend if she continues forward. Our girl thanks him again and presses on, determined to locate Ayan amid the bustling chaos. We're brought back to Kinemia as she follows the man who is supposed to guide her, and immediately her instincts tell her something is wrong. She thinks the place feels far too secluded and worries that she should leave. She tells him she needs to go back to the main street because she left something, but he grabs her hand and panic hits as she tells him to let go. He comments on her strength, and she picks up a stick, warning him not to come closer. He teases her about the stick, and she realizes just how reckless she has been, blindly following him after Ayan disappeared. She scolds herself in her mind, thinking, Ayan, Kreutz, you crazy idiot. After making such a fuss about being assigned as a bodyguard, where the hell is he and what is he even doing? This moment is tense, and I think I'm also scared right now. A bird suddenly passes overhead and the scene shifts. On the roof, Ayan watches everything from above and notices the same bird passing near the alley where Kinemia is held. He is scolded by the bird for only reaching out when he wants something, but he greets it, calling it master, claiming he came at the perfect time. He points out the debate below, and they discuss the research subject, noting that she has no magic but still recognizes him as a Rikasha. The bird doubts the situation, asking if he might have met her before, but he insists he wouldn't make a mistake. The master considers herself in danger, and he agrees it looks bad. Continuing the conversation with his master, which takes the form of a bird, he wonders how she could hide her magic while skillfully handling the broom, but is told to act and save her already. He finally appears in front of her, declaring he is there to rescue her. She questions where he has been, and he apologizes before snapping his fingers, causing the man holding her to feel sharp pain. Kinemia warns him to stop, fearing he will kill the man, but he coldly says that is the objective. I can't believe he is actually going this far. We see Ayan accuse him of trying to kill her, and the man panics, coughing and gasping, thinking he can't breathe, while Louis demands he stop, insisting that murder and punishment are two different things. The man is filled with rage, thinking he will kill the little brat, but suddenly he falls to the ground, struck by one of three ladies who appear out of nowhere. They check whether Kinemia and Ayan are okay, and one comments that market days attract strange people, advising them to come with a guardian next time. She thanks them, thinking how lucky it is that someone almost didn't die, while one of the ladies carries the man off to hand him to the guard. The first lady offers to guide them, and Kinemia explains she is looking for a weapons shop with a frog sign, which turns out to be their own shop. They arrive safely, and the lady tells them the shop is empty, inviting them to come in comfortably. Kinemia is struck by the skill of the behemoths, thinking she never expected to meet someone like them, while Ayan asks if they are the Slimecrafts women. She affirms this, reflecting on how impressive their work is, though their business is not doing well. They notice the shop's quiet, peaceful vibe, and she quickly covers his mouth, redirecting the conversation to the equipment's excellence. The ladies praise her intelligence and ability to judge weapons and offer to give her a few items, but she politely declines, announcing she will buy everything and making an additional request. The sisters are surprised when she introduces herself as Kinemia Leon of the Leon family, and they are shocked at her status. Seated with them, she considers the taste of power, thinking about how their skills are exactly what she needs to solve a major problem with weapons corroding from monster blood. She explains she wants a new kind of weapon crafted under an exclusive contract with the behemoths, and the sisters, concerned about being bound unfairly, whisper to each other, which Kinemia hears, asserting her awareness. The scene continues as Kinemia holds her ground while the behemoth sisters, Lana and Sarah, debate. Lana jokes about being scammed by such a tiny, cute young lady, and Sarah reminds her not to judge by appearances, which Kinemia interrupts, saying she cannot hear them. In her mind, she plans carefully, realizing that since this era doesn't have crafting with monster materials, she must create the idea herself for her people. She wants to make a sword that can endure monsters, not one that needs to be discarded after every fight, and explains that the weapon must be durable. Sarah questions if her greatest desire is a sword that won't corrode from monster blood, and Kinemia confirms, proposing monster bones as material. Lana is shocked and Sarah hesitates, questioning why Kinemia would entrust such a task to countryside blacksmiths. Kinemia explains that handling monster material requires wielding aura, which they can do, and mentions that her mother recognized their skill when she saw them surge with aura. In her mind, she recalls knowing this from the original story, and Sarah acknowledges her mother's recognition while Lana recalls always hoping someone would appreciate their work. Kinemia thinks just a little more persuasion will win them over, offering fair contract terms with all equipment and materials provided. Ayan watches silently, observing everything, thinking how surprising it is that Kinemia recognizes their aura, and even as a Vaikasha herself, she handles everything personally instead of sending subordinates. Suddenly, Sarah notices someone shouting Brian, and he dashes away, prompting Lana to pursue him with a weapon, calling him a perverted freak. Sarah also follows, apologizes to Kinemia, and suggests they continue the conversation later, then shouts after Lana to wait. We are drawn into the chaos as Lana and Sarah chase Brian through the street, shouting for him to stop while he continues running. Lana finally catches him and drags him to the ground, confronting him angrily about sneaking around her house. Brian protests, claiming he was only passing by, but she insists he was spying. Their argument escalates with Lana about to strike him with a hammer, calling him useless, until Sarah intervenes, reminding her of the last time they acted recklessly and lost customers. Lana resists, worried about him spying again, while Brian defends himself, pointing out that they have no proof and accusing them of framing him because their business is failing. She counters, blaming him for bad-mouthing their shop, and he argues that he only stopped by because the building belonged to his father, suggesting they improve their products instead of blaming others. The argument intensifies until Sayer steps in again, telling her to stop and just go back, while bystanders begin murmuring, speculating that the outburst is due to their failing business. Brian, still on the ground, complains that he came out only out of pity and that he is being treated unfairly, and the sisters' anger begins to fade as the crowd reacts with shock. Lana starts feeling guilty, and Brian demands an apology. I would have walked away a long time ago, one might think, seeing how stubborn and emotional the whole situation becomes. The scene shifts as Lana and Sayer recall their childhood, remembering how Brian's mother scolded them when her child was bruised, making Sayer immediately bow and apologize, expressing deep regret while Lana watches in surprise. Kinemiya thinks to herself how much she hates seeing someone bow so humbly, but the moment passes, and Lana drops the hammer, telling Sayer it's time to go home. They leave together, and Brian laughs at their retreat, calling them a disgrace, which draws murmurs from the crowd about two young women running a blacksmith shop. Sayer listens as people gossip, thinking it's unfair that they are judged, and Lana apologizes again, recalling childhood memories with Sarah, the way they packed their things and held each other, promising to look out for one another despite having no one else. Sayer reflects on this as well, deciding that if no one else will believe in or support them, they must be each other's allies. She picks up the hammer with determination, ready to strike Brian, thinking she will protect Lana at all costs. Suddenly, the hammer disappears, leaving Sayer confused, while Brian holds his head, shocked that it is gone. Kinemiya steps in, commanding everyone to stop and declaring she will handle things from here. She points out that the hammer belongs to Sarah, who is stunned to see it moved, and then turns to Brian, demanding an immediate apology to Lana and Sarah. Finally, someone is standing up for them properly. We watch the tension rise as Brian stands and argues with Chloe, calling her a little kid who knows nothing and should stay out of it. He refuses to apologize and insists he was framed by Lana and Sayer, who were blinded by money. However, Kinemiya immediately calls it a lie and reminds him that he was peeping earlier. He denies it, but she calmly explains that she and the Behemoth sisters were discussing a contract involving a massive investment. Sayer adds that she did not accuse him just to squeeze money from him, yet he mocks them, saying beggars are always greedy and will do anything for money. At that moment, he begins to think deeply, wondering who Kinemiya really is. Her clothes show she is not some ordinary person, yet he has never seen her in the local circles. He assumes she must just be the daughter of a rich merchant and nothing special. Confident again, he crosses his arms and mocks the sisters' skill, claiming their poor work would never earn a contract, and that they probably plan to use him as an excuse to drain his father's wealth. Lana bursts with anger at his words, but Sayer quickly stops her. Then Kinemiya calmly asks if he has ever even held a behemoth sword or properly looked at a farming tool. He proudly answers that he has no reason to touch such things because of who his father is. She then points out his weak arms and says he has nothing to show except his father, and at that moment, we can almost feel his pride crack. I honestly think that line hits him right where it hurts. Just as the argument grows hotter, a voice suddenly interrupts the street, demanding to know what the commotion is. Brian turns to see the Count arrive and immediately feels lucky, thinking the timing is perfect and that he will make the arrogant child beg for forgiveness. He approaches confidently and claims he is being falsely accused. However, when the Count looks behind him and sees who made the accusation, his eyes widen in shock. The man quickly bows and greets Kinemiya as the Grand Duke of Leon's daughter. The mood in the street changes at once. The Count respectfully says he would have welcomed her had he known she was visiting, while she calmly explains that she came only to see the artisan they discussed earlier. Brian is stunned to realize the girl he insulted is the Grand Duke's daughter, and before he can recover, she asks the Count to handle the man who has been harassing the talented people she is interested in. Hearing this, the Count repeats the accusation with shock, and Lana and Sayer step forward to confirm everything, explaining how he spied on their house, spread rumors about their shop, insulted them in public, and even tried to raise his hand against them. Brian desperately claims it is all a misunderstanding, yet Kinemiya gives him a cold stare and orders him to apologize without repeating herself. Around them, the crowd begins whispering, realizing the sisters were telling the truth and that the man just insulted someone the Count himself bowed to. Fear finally takes over Brian, and before the situation worsens, he suddenly kneels on the ground and bows deeply, begging Lana and Sayer for forgiveness again and again. At that moment, I couldn't help thinking, karma really arrived fast for this guy. We continue watching the aftermath as two guards grab Brian and begin dragging him away, yet he still struggles and shouts that he has already apologized and should be released. However, the Count calmly reminds him that he came to investigate complaints about him, explaining that he has heard reports of him putting his hands on women and then trying to silence them with money. Even as the guards take him away, he keeps yelling that it is a false accusation and that everything is a setup. Nevertheless, the Count turns to Kanemia and politely apologizes, saying he will handle the rest of the matter properly. She simply says she trusts that he will handle the payment properly. Afterward, Sae sincerely thanks her, admitting that if she had not stepped in, they might have been labeled murderers, and Lana also expresses deep gratitude. Kanemia reflects silently that in the original story, the sisters were forced to wander the battlefield because of the stigma of being murderers, and she realizes that if she had arrived even a little later, the outcome could have been disastrous. Then she brushes off their thanks and instead asks if they have reconsidered the contract she proposed earlier, reminding them that she made a bold statement in front of everyone and that backing out now might make it seem like she was bluffing. The two sisters look at each other, smile, and admit they guess they have no choice, finally agreeing to sign the contract. In the next scene, we return to the castle, where a slime is suddenly presented to Chloe, leaving her surprised, because she never expected them to actually make one. Sae explains that leaving monster material unused would be wasteful and that making it was not very difficult, while Lana adds that the monster-repelling weapon will take more time and they wanted to show her something first, proudly saying she worked hard on the texture. Kanemia touches it and reacts with simple curiosity, continuing to play with it as Sae asks how it feels. She admits that it is fun, which makes Lana happy, and she promises to make another one in a different color next time, asking whether pink or blue would be better. Meanwhile, in another place, Aeon is speaking with his master, who appears as a bed. The master reminds him that the research has already confirmed that the young lady has no magical power and asks how long he plans to stay here. He calmly replies that he will remain until his wounds heal, though the master points out that it has already been months. He insists he was seriously injured, yet the master silently thinks he is lying. Still, the master tells him not to come back for now because the elders are furious over what he did. Aeon casually argues that he only fought back when Ryan's gang attacked first and calls it self-defense, but the master angrily reminds him that wiping out an entire dozen tower mages can hardly be called self-defense. He replies that he at least spared Ryan, the elder's favorite, since he was the ringleader. Finally, he reveals his true intention. His research is not finished yet because one experiment remains, and he wants to see whether the Grand Duchess truly has something special. He is clearly planning something far bigger than he lets on. We are brought to a quiet training moment where Kanemia practices with her sword while counting each swing, reaching 42, 43, 44, and 45 before finally slowing down from exhaustion. Aeon notices her struggle and comments that she is very weak in the morning. She explains that it is due to low blood pressure and to her being extremely busy lately. At that moment, we see what she means as she remembers the endless work piling up around her. One person asks her to review the expansion plans for the blacksmith. Another brings a design draft for the engraving on the new weapon and asks for her opinion, and someone else reports that Balkayo Trading Company wants an exclusive deal to sell slime toys. Thinking back on all this work, she realizes that her original plan was only to benefit from the munchkin, and that overworking herself like this was never part of it. The exhaustion catches up to her, and she begins to fall asleep on her feet, yet Aeon quickly catches her before she drops. He asks if she's okay. She thanks him, and she quietly admits to herself that the moment startled her. However, he teases her by pointing out that her face is red, asking if he caused some points, and she quickly turns away, saying it is obviously from training. Inside her mind, she admits that every time she talks to him, it feels like she is getting dragged into something strange. Meanwhile, while standing there, he secretly casts a spell while touching his stomach. Soon, he opens his shirt and reveals blood, claiming the wound has opened again. She rushes toward him in concern and notices the bleeding, remembering that it has already been 5 months and it still has not healed. He explains it is a magical wound, so it takes longer to recover, and when she touches it, he suddenly shouts. She quickly apologizes and asks if it hurt, but he says it does not really hurt. However, inside his mind, a very different plan unfolds. Aeon thinks the Grand Duchess is exhausted, and that her pity for him leaves a gap in her heart, which makes this the perfect time. He remembers a warning from his master who once told him not to use mind magic, explaining that mind magic is forbidden because it directly affects a person's consciousness and could cause serious damage, especially to someone so young. The master warned him that forbidden magic exists for a reason, yet back in the present, he quietly rejects that warning and thinks that this is what he has always done. At that moment, he casts the spell on Kanemiya and tries to pry into her secrets. However, something strange happens. She suddenly asks what he just did, which shocks him because the magic should have worked. He quickly pretends nothing happened and claims she just seemed out of it. She simply says training is over for today and that she should prepare to meet the priest. Meanwhile, confusion grows in his mind because the magic failed. Floating magic and teleportation worked before, so he wonders if she has some ability that cancels his magic, even though she has no mana at all. This makes him even more curious about who she really is. In fact, he finds her more interesting than ever and praises her dedication, saying she always gives her best even when no one is watching. She simply replies that she promised her mother she would never skip training. At this point, I can't help thinking, this girl clearly has something special if even forbidden magic cannot touch her. We remain with Kanemiya and Ayin after training, and the conversation slowly turns personal. She almost asks about his parents, but quickly stops herself, thinking it would be rude to ask about family matters out of curiosity. She tries to brush it off, yet he answers anyway, explaining that he has no parents. He recalls that, when he was about 7 years old, his father suddenly gave him a blindfold one ordinary day and told him to wear it because a surprise gift was waiting. They walked for a long time, and although he kept asking where they were going and what the surprise was, his father never replied. The ground beneath his feet felt damp, and walking blindfolded was frightening. However, even in that moment, the only thing on his mind was how long it had been since he last held his father's hand, so he simply kept walking beside him. Eventually, they stopped, and his father told him to wait there with the blindfold still on and to count to 100 while he went to get the gift. His father even said he was smart enough to wait. That was when he realized the surprise was probably a lie and that he might be getting left behind forever. Even so, he stayed there and waited, and when night came, he kept counting to 100 again and again. Returning to the present, he says the whole thing sounds stupid. Kanemiya quietly looks at him, gently touches his face, and says it is not stupid at all. At that moment, I find myself thinking, any kid would have done the same thing because the scene reveals how lonely his childhood truly was. In the next scene, we see Kanemiya sitting calmly while drinking tea and speaking with Priest Andrea. She learns that he plans to step down from the priesthood because his age has weakened his divine power. She asks when the next priest will arrive in the Grand Duchy, but he explains that the temple may withdraw entirely. She reacts with shock, questioning why this would happen when people still visit the temple and the duchy continues to make large yearly contributions. Although he claims not to know the details, she quickly guesses the reason must be Duke Roslin. Her thoughts explain the situation clearly. Duke Roslin is the temple's biggest donor and someone who holds deep hatred toward her family. His daughter, Fairy Daniel, once broke her engagement because she fell in love with Chloe's father, and the Duke also lost a huge investment in her father's business that was never returned. Because of this, she believes he cannot stand her family. She then worries about what will happen to the medical care for the people if the temple closes. The priest laughs gently and says, "The Lord will provide," yet she calls out to him in frustration and begins thinking that she must find another solution. Finally, the story shifts to another place where we see a blue-haired woman named Shen Tian lying down, coughing again and again. Weak and quiet, she says that when the last leaf on the tree falls, she will die. Shen Tian lies coughing and covering her mouth, yet she suddenly asks for one last thing, alcohol, saying she feels a strong craving and begging for just a sip. Lo immediately tells her to wake up from that dream and reminds her she's healthy enough to walk for another 100 years. She complains, calling him cruel, begging again, and angrily criticizes the people of the Leonine continent as uncultured fools, asking if he has no compassion. He calmly asks why she keeps demanding alcohol when everything he brings tastes terrible to her, and she insists the drinks are awful, determined to keep searching for one that suits her taste. Lo points out she spent the whole day, and maybe the so-called divine liquor never existed, questioning why she's so obsessed when other delicious things exist. She firmly explains that some flavors are tied to memories, and I have to admit, yeah, memories really can turn a simple taste into something special. Then we shift to her memory with her master. Years ago, he offered her a drink crafted from ingredients imported from the Leonine continent. She complained that he was drinking in broad daylight and saw no appeal in it. but he insisted that alchemists must stay open-minded and explore everything. He told her it was called divinely core and explained the difficulty of making it. She tried it, expecting the famed drink but spat it out, claiming it was poison. The master scolded her for wasting it. She argued the Leonine continent has many sweet ingredients, and he said this is why he still calls her a child. Later, he gave up and promised she could gorge on sweets in the Leonine continent if she kept working hard. While packing for the trip, she reminded him she wouldn't pack his bags this time, and he grumbled playfully. Then he called her again to apologize for delaying the trip due to a summons from the Imperial Palace, and she guessed correctly that it was for some weapon project, but he reassured her she was too young to worry. At the palace, the king questions the master, offering an antidote and respect if he obeys, but the master refuses, saying alchemy is not for killing and that even enemy soldiers are human. The king laughs and exiles him and all connected to him, warning that anyone who helps will die, and even surviving elsewhere, he would be hunted. Soon after, Shintian reunites with him, holding him as he lies, weak on the ground. She says they are almost at the border and promises to find an antidote in the Leonine continent, begging him to hold on. He asks if she remembers the divine liquor he once let her taste. She recalls it and pleads for him to stop talking since he is still bleeding. But he continues, saying he had hoped to drink it again in the Leonine continent. Gently placing a hand on her face, he tells her she has the taste buds of a child and should buy all the sweets she wants, apologizing for not being able to stay with her. This moment is really heartbreaking. Back in the present, Shintian stares out the window. Lo suggests stopping the search for the liquor and hands her a package to open. She catches it, surprised at how expensive it looks. He explains that it came from the innkeeper, delivered by someone who resembled a high-ranking messenger. She's shocked it's for her, and Lo reminds her she's an illegal resident and jokes she might have caused trouble while drunk again. She calls him an insolent brat and warns him not to underestimate her, but he says he only worries about her being expelled if they act recklessly. Ignoring him, she opens the container and finds a bottle and a letter. Lifting the bottle, she wonders what it is, even thinking it could be poison. Then her eyes widen as a shocking thought hits her. She picks up the letter, hands shaking as she reads it. Lo asks what's wrong, and she simply says to pack his things because they have someone to meet. We enter a strange dream where Shan Tian stands before his master. The master calls him closer, hands him a drink, and asks him to hold it for a moment, explaining that it is precious to those weeds because it was brewed personally with ingredients from the Leonine continent. Hearing that, Shintian is surprised and asks how the master even managed to arrive there since the path is rough and the journey must have been difficult. However, while speaking, he suddenly pauses and realizes this is only a dream. Even so, the master keeps looking at him, and Shintian speaks with sadness, admitting that this unworthy disciple grows more tired in both mind and body as each day passes. Furthermore, he explains that nothing in the Leonine continent reminds him of the master because the poems were burned to ashes by Shinkakan. In addition, no one in this land understands alchemy or the true value of the master's achievements. As a result, it feels like he is the only one who still remembers, yet even he can no longer clearly recall the master's face. Therefore, it feels as if the master never existed at all. He admits that fleeting memories are not enough because they vanish like the wind, and what he really needs is real proof to remember him by, just like the liquid he once tasted long ago. Just when it seems the dream will continue, Shan Tian suddenly wakes up and wonders where he is. At that moment, Kanemia calls his name and asks if he is feeling alright. However, the story shifts a few hours earlier as Kanemia remembers several troubling matters. She thinks about the Jade Star migration for George and the lack of news today. Moreover, she recalls how an abrupt order from the other forced the temple to shut down. In addition, she remembers when her people said the funds were ready and that the Grand Duchess could even use the treasury, yet Louis refused, explaining that doing so would only fatten the others. After dismissing the vassals who suggested making a donation deal with Duke Roslin, Louis began considering another plan. Consequently, the new idea was alchemy from the Eastern continent. We learn that alchemy is a mystical art discovered in the East, and in lands without followers of the other, it replaces divine power for healing. Unlike divine power, which takes a long time to heal one person, alchemy allows many people to be treated quickly through potions. As a result, by the latter part of the original story, alchemy becomes more popular than divine power. Therefore, this is the perfect opportunity to recruit alchemists and take control of a blue ocean market in the Leonine continent. Fortunately, alchemists already exist secretly across the Leonine continent, although they are exiles who criticized the tyrant Shinkakan and now live as illegal immigrants. Because of that, gathering them openly is difficult, yet if a certain person is involved, it may still be possible. Soon, Vanessa approaches Kinemia and says, "The guests have arrived." She becomes excited and asks if it is really true, thinking about the leader of the alchemists, an unmatched genius. However, Vanessa hesitates and asks if these are truly the people she expected. When Kinemia finally sees them, she is shocked. Shen immediately says this old body will not last much longer and asks for liquor. Hearing that makes Kinemia feel the situation is a little terrifying, so she quietly asks Vanessa to bring alcohol and she leaves to get it. Honestly, I cannot help thinking, this introduction is already chaotic. Back in the present, Shen Tian stands with his arms folded while Kinemia observes him, thinking it strange that he was making such a fuss about dying earlier, yet now looks perfectly fine. Moreover, she recalls hearing that he built an absurdly strong body by eating all sorts of strange things while searching for alcohol, which makes him look ridiculously young. She also realizes Shen Tian is actually Mochura, and while noticing the person who came with him is still sitting nearby, she decides to avoid eye contact because she has no idea who that person is. Instead, she focuses on her goal and politely thanks him for traveling so far, introducing herself as Kinemia Leon, the Grand Duchess of Leon. Shen Tian simply reacts with a quiet sound while thinking that this small girl must be the one who sent the box earlier. Moreover, he admits she at least understands proper manners, unlike the fools of the Leonern continent. In addition, he notices that although she looks tiny, she carries the face of a beauty that could ruin nations. Finally, he asks why the young Grand Duchess sought him. Kinemia immediately brings up his fame as the greatest alchemist of the Eastern continent. Hearing this, Shen Tian laughs proudly and says, even in the Leonern continent, his reputation arrives first. Like a needle hidden in a pouch that always pokes through, she praises him further and says that across all continents he stands like a queen among chickens, which makes him realize she understands quite a bit of the Eastern language. Meanwhile, Lo sits quietly nearby, listening to strange phrases like needle in a pouch and queen among chickens, clearly confused by them. Kinemia then explains that although she still has much to learn, the proverbs of the Eastern continent carry deep wisdom, and as head of her family, she studies them carefully. Finally, she reveals the plan. The Lian family will use all the temple grounds to build a full alchemy district. Shen Tian quickly understands this will require many alchemists and realizes she wants him as the leader to gather them. She calmly confirms it and promises strong rewards, including legal status, housing, and fair pay for every alchemist who settles in the Grand Duchy. Hearing this, he realizes she is not simply hiring him but planning to build an entire alchemy district, which is shocking in a place where alchemy is treated as taboo. Furthermore, the Grand Duchy's offer of protection means they must be strong enough to withstand backlash, so the offer feels unbelievably generous. Still, she has not said what she wants in return, so he decides to accept first and investigate later since the rewards are too good to ignore. Yet just before he can respond, Lo suddenly jumps up and accepts the offer loudly. Kinemia reacts with surprise, repeats the strange word, fairy, after hearing it and confirms it again. However, she suddenly remembers something about him. Despite his huge size, he is obsessed with cute creatures, and honestly, that detail makes the moment surprisingly funny. Shen Tian becomes angry and scolds Lo for making his own decision, but Lo argues that the offer is amazing and says his master needs a new goal in life, so he stops living in the past. This only annoys Shen Tian more as he complains about the constant overstepping. Seeing the argument growing worse, Kinemia quickly tells them to stop fighting because she has not even revealed the best part. She places a letter on the table and asks Shen Tian if he is curious about the recipe for the liqueur she gave him earlier. Then she calmly reveals she is willing to give him the recipe for the divine liqueur itself. Hearing that shocking offer, Shen Tian is stunned, and finally Kinemia confirms the recipe will be his if he agrees to a lifetime contract with House Leon. Shen Tian stands before Kinemia, his arms folded, and calmly brings up the lifetime contract, saying there is something he must confirm before deciding. First, he asks how the Grand Duchess even knew he had been searching for the divine liqueur. Moreover, he questions how she plans to prove that the recipe she mentioned is truly real. Kinemia answers that she learned about his search while asking people about his whereabouts. Furthermore, rumors had been spreading that an alcoholic from the Eastern continent had been visiting taverns everywhere while demanding the divine liqueur. Hearing this, Shen Tian quietly covers his mouth and reflects that gossip exists everywhere. Then Kinemia speaks honestly and admits that she herself does not actually know if the recipe is real. Instead, only Duke Shen Tian himself can verify it. This confuses him, so he asks what she means. As a result, Kanemia begins explaining something from the past. She talks about her grandfather who traveled far and wide in his youth to expand his knowledge. He visited nearby lands and distant countries with very different climates and cultures, and he carefully recorded every experience in journals. Kanemia says she grew up reading those journals like storybooks. Then she reveals that when she heard Duke Shentian was searching for the divine liqueur, one story from those journals suddenly came to mind. According to the journal, her grandfather once met a man from the eastern continent who called himself an alchemist. That man was searching for rare ingredients to create the divine liqueur because he wanted to show his disciple, who did not understand alcohol, the ultimate flavor. After many hardships, he gathered all the ingredients and left happily for his homeland, saying his disciple was waiting. Hearing this story, Shantian's eyes widen as he immediately thinks about his master. Lowering his gaze, Shantian reflects that he believed he would never find any trace of his master again. Therefore, he asks if the recipe was also written in the journal. Kanemia calmly confirms that it was and explains that the liqueur she sent him was made according to that exact recipe. His eyes widen again, and she gently asks how it tasted and whether it was, in fact, the drink he had been searching for. Hearing that question, memories return to him. He recalls the first sip burning his mouth, the thick feeling in his throat, the strong wave of aroma, and finally the deep aftertaste that feels like a forest yet also like honey. As these memories return, he also remembers his master. Soon after, Shantian admits the taste was unmistakable and so strong it remains carved into his memory, meaning it truly was the exact flavor. However, he reflects that unless the Imperial Council collapses, returning to his homeland will remain impossible, and going back to a place where his master no longer exists feels meaningless. Yet he suddenly thinks that someone here wants to use his master's knowledge to save lives, and leaving traces of that knowledge in this land with his own hands might not be a bad thing. Honestly, hearing that thought makes the moment feel powerful because it shows how much he still respects his master. As a result, Shantian finally agrees and asks where to place his seal. Kanemia instantly becomes excited and asks if that means what she thinks it means, quickly thanking Duke Shantian and promising he will not regret the choice. Shantian calmly says he trusts her, and just like that, the agreement is made. Soon after, Lo walks up to Kanemia and happily extends his hands saying, "This is wonderful," and asking her to take good care of their master. However, something strange happens immediately because Lo suddenly turns into a cat. Just when things cannot get any stranger, a voice calls from behind. It is Ayan, asking Kanemia if she is all right. She turns back and calls his name. He then asks if she is hot anyway. Kanemia becomes confused and asks if what just happened was his doing. He calmly admits it was, explaining that a suspicious man was about to touch her and that he is her bodyguard. Kanemia quickly tells him that Lo was not suspicious and asks why he sent Lo to the forbidden Mabu forest on the Leonin continent. As a result, she immediately orders him to bring him back. Without hesitation, Ayan snaps his fingers and says he will do it if she insists. In the next moment, he snaps again, and Lo suddenly returns. Kanemia checks on him right away and asks if he is alright and what happened during that short time. Lo calmly says nothing happened. Kanemia looks at him and replies that it definitely does not look like nothing happened. She then turns to Ayan and firmly explains that Mr. Lo is not suspicious and tells him never to do something like that again. He simply agrees. Yet inside his mind, Ayan notices that Lo's eyes look completely out of it. Meanwhile, he watches Kanemia guide Shantian to place his seal on the contract while thinking that Lo might be an even bigger lunatic than Kakan and that the end might be near. Honestly, if someone suddenly turned into a cat right in front of me, I would probably be shocked too. After that moment, the story moves outside a door. Shantian tells Kanemia he needs to lie down and rest for a while. She politely tells him to rest well and says she will be counting on him from now on. As a result, Kanemia feels satisfied because Shantian has now been officially recruited. Later in her office, she reflects on how everything happened. She remembers wondering how she could recruit him, yet her grandfather's journal suddenly caught her eye at the perfect moment. Because of that, her luck feels almost unbelievable. She recalls the moment she read the journal and discovered the story about Shantian and his master inside it. This makes her wonder why she suddenly felt like reading a journal she had not touched in so long, and she begins to think it almost feels as if someone deliberately guided her. On another day, the scene shifts to the Grand Duchy, where many people from the eastern continent are arriving. A passerby asks why so many people from the east are entering the Grand Duchy. Another man answers that they are alchemists. Someone repeats the word, alchemists in surprise, and others say they heard the Grand Duchess turn the temple grounds into an alchemy district called Hyaminwan. Soon after, Kinemiya and Shentian stand at the entrance of this new district as she announces the start of the potion demonstration. Shentian calls for the representative of the injured person to step forward, and the man responds loudly, wondering whether an alchemy potion is really safe. Shentian calmly lifts a bottle and explains that it is a medical decoction brewed personally, known in the Leonine continent as a potion, and that it only needs to be poured onto the wound. The moment it touches the injury, the man shouts. Yet the wound begins to heal. Shocked, he says the pain is gone. Shentian casually tells him to stop exaggerating. Meanwhile, the watching crowd is amazed at how quickly the wound heals. Some ask the name of the medicine, and Shentian answers that it is called Palpu. The crowd immediately praises the name and calls it fantastic. While the excitement continues, Kinemiya quietly leaves the scene and walks over to Ayan. She calls his name and tells him to come with her. His eyes widen as he asks where they are going, and she calmly says there is nowhere else to go because he needs to treat his wound. Hearing that suddenly shocks Ayan. As Kinemiya arrives at the alchemy district, several girls rush toward her, greeting the little fairy lady with excitement and asking why she came all the way here. One even offers some medicinal candy, but she politely declines, explaining that she came to treat her guard Ayan's magical injury. They happily agree and guide them inside. Ayan sits before an alchemist, who first asks to examine the wound. When he opens his shirt, the alchemist is shocked, but suddenly Ayan speaks directly into his mind, warning him not to show surprise, telling him to blink if he understands, and threatening to kill him for any mistake. His eyes turn purple as he orders the alchemist to tell Kinemiya the wound cannot be healed, leaving the man confused. Then he remembers Shentian warned him about a madman following the fairy and realizes this must be that person because Ayan has repeatedly mutilated his own side. Still, pride as an alchemist conflicts with giving up the chance to impress the fairy lady. Inside Ayan's mind, he impatiently demands attention, and finally, the alchemist decides not to sacrifice his pride. Ayan calmly introduces himself as Ayan Kreutz and says he is about to end his life, which makes the moment tense. The alchemist then tells Kinemiya that the injury cannot be healed because of a powerful curse, choosing his own life and peaceful future over pride. Kinemiya accepts it calmly, and he apologizes. Ayan smiles, gives a thumbs up, and thinks it is right not to treat the wound yet. He also reflects on Chloe, noticing she has no magic, is skilled with a sword, is weak in the morning, likes soft animals, keeps distance from him, yet smiles naturally with others, and he feels strangely irritated. Just then, a voice calls Fair Lady, and both turn to see Lo. Soon after, Lo runs toward Chloe, who happily calls his name. He explains he came because he heard about an adorable present and found the fairy lady. Ayan watches, thinking this is the same fellow again, and casts magic at him. But Lo dodges instantly, shocking Ayan. Kinemiya asks about the kitty, and he says it is sleeping. Ayan keeps thinking about how fast that move was, questioning who Lo really is. Lo then gives Kinemiya a handmade gift which she finds soft and warm, and she happily says it is the first handmade gift she has ever received. Lo is shocked, thinking she receives 35 gifts every day. Kinemiya laughs. Ayan feels jealous and thinks he is an idiot. Then Lo lifts her, declaring he will knit one outfit for her every day, and she says it is unnecessary. Someone calls her my lady, so she leaves, leaving only Ayan and Lo. Ayan throws many spells, but Lo dodges them all. Shentian watches from afar, sighing at how crazy they are, even crazier than Kakan. An old man approaches Shentian, expressing gratitude to him and his master for creating Hyaminwan. He shares how he was respected in his homeland but treated as useless in the Leonine continent, waiting for death until he saw the notice, prepared herbs, and healed people, realizing he could still help others. He thanks Shentian and the master for the opportunity. As he leaves, Shentian reflects that he is not the only one who remembers his master and smiles, thinking today the drink tastes especially good, almost as if his master is sitting beside him. I would have felt the same warmth.